Yes! Yes! I've done it! David, come here!
Yes, Steve?
I figured out how we can get more views and subscribers.
Yes!
With this elixir, we'll become super reviewers.
Yes!
And everybody will love us!
Hi, I'm Steve,
I'm David.
and we just watched the 10th episode of Series 8 Doctor Who in the Forest of the Night, in which the entire world, including the oceans apparently, are covered by trees. So, what did you think of this episode?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it. I wasn't like, oh my god, I can't believe I just watched that thing. But I didn't like it that much, especially after the last episode, which I thought was probably the best of the series. There was just a lot about this episode that made me go, what? Like, huh? Like, what are you talking about? Why are you doing that? This doesn't make any sense to me. And that just went right on through all the way to the end.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your initial sentiment of it felt like there was just a lot of things that happened in the episode just so they could get the Doctor and Clara in certain places. Like the plot just didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, like the only things they knew they wanted to do, they're like, okay, we want the Doctor to leave and think that he's going to kill everybody or let everybody die, and then we want this moment between him and Clara, and then everything else was just I guess we need to come up with a story or something.
Yeah, that's essentially how it felt to me. The idea of a forest growing overnight was not necessarily a bad one, but then it introduced this sort of sentient life force that exists throughout the earth and has been here forever.
It didn't really explain it.
Didn't really explain it, and the Doctor didn't know about this before. I mean, he saved the Earth how many times, and this is the first time that he's interacted with this thing.
And he didn't seem that interested. You know what I mean? He's like, he met them, they spoke to him, he took them at their word, and was like, oh, well, I guess there's nothing I can do. Yeah. Everybody's going to die. Hey, Clara, you want to get in the TARDIS with me? No? Oh, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't seem to me like they followed through on any of their thoughts in this episode.
Right.
I mean, there were a lot of, like, beginnings of good ideas, and maybe they just weren't creative enough to figure out their resolution, and so they just figured that we would make our own assumptions as to how it maybe makes sense. Not that, I mean, everything in sci-fi needs to make sense, but, a story should make sense.
Right.
And they introduced a lot of big ideas and didn't really seem to want to make the connections for us as to how they made any sense.
Yeah, it didn't feel like that the characters were acting true to themselves either. It felt like they were acting in a manner that they needed to serve the script.
Right, like Clara. The Doctor seems to be willing to fill the TARDIS like a life raft with humans, and then he just lets Clara decide for the kids that they'd be better off dead than worrying about their parents.
Yeah.
What? And then he's like, oh, well, you don't want me to save you, Clara? Oh, well, then, I guess I should just go away then and not ask any other of the 7 billion people on Earth if they would rather just die than, not have to live on Earth anymore.
And then when he finally realizes that they're going to be fine and he's running after them, they're just going to ignore him like they would.
Right, she was like, what? Just ignore him, just keep walking. I don't want I want like my last interaction with the Doctor to be that one, so I'm just gonna ignore whatever he has to say now. It just didn't make any sense to me. It didn't seem real. You put yourself in any of their situations, and it just didn't seem like the authentic way that they would behave.
Right. So, given all that, is there anything positive you can say about this episode?
I mean, I think production-wise, there were a lot of really cool things. The scene where the little girl is speaking as like the mouthpiece for this new life form, that was all done really cool. Just unfortunately, everything they actually said was a bunch of garbly-gook and didn't make any sense, or was just vague to an extreme.
Yeah, esoteric, like
Yeah.
just so that they could move that plot point forward.
Yeah, I mean, it looked really cool and sounded really cool. It was really like dramatic scene. It's just they wasted it.
Yeah. Positives.
Hmm.
I did like the way the Doctor interacted with a lot of the children.
Yeah, that was nice.
It was nice to see that he still gets along with kids even in his new incarnation.
Yeah, I like that Maeve character. I don't know. There's something about her that seemed she was a good little actress. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, she was probably the best actor of all the kids there.
Yeah, the kids in general, I thought were pretty funny. So,
Yeah.
yay for the kids.
Yeah, I didn't feel like all the jokes landed.
No, they didn't.
But,
I mean, that's been going on this whole series. I mean,
Yeah.
they really try hard with the jokes. And they don't all
Yeah.
land.
Some of them were alright, but I didn't find myself actually laughing when I knew I was supposed to.
Yeah, most of the time I was too distracted by being angry about whatever just happened and wasn't explained or didn't make any sense.
So a few points of things that you didn't like. You'd mentioned the lack of proper explanation for things.
Yep. You know, I feel like they're trying in these episodes to build up to these really dramatic payoff moments, and because they're all maybe because of
They're contrived. They're
they're
not
contrived.
earned.
Exactly. Yeah, they're not earned. Maybe that's because they've decided no serialization whatsoever. But if you're not going to serialize, it's going to be really hard in a 40-minute time period to build up to one of those really big moments.
Right.
And it's going to feel contrived.
Yeah. I will say of this episode though, as much as I didn't like it, I didn't hate it either.
Exactly.
You know, it wasn't one of those episodes that I've seen in past seasons where it's like, I wish that episode had never happened.
Mm-hmm.
It was just,
It kept my attention the whole time because I kept waiting for that moment where it was
Yeah.
all going to come together.
Well, I was waiting for it to either all come together or to completely fall apart.
Right.
And it never really did either.
Mm-hmm.
So I did think they crossed the line a bit when they had Maeve be the one to contact everybody on Earth with her silly little message.
Right, because you really want them to take you seriously.
Yeah.
And are they really going to take the voice of a little girl seriously? I don't know. I mean, it was kind of sweet, but again,
Nobody would listen to that.
yeah.
Like, keep burning the trees, guys.
yeah. And they could have in their message offered a little bit more information. Like, there's a solar flare
Right.
that's going to burn up the Earth, and the reason why these trees are here is to, observe that. And we are capable on this planet of observing these kinds of phenomena. They could have then drawn their attention to it.
Yeah.
And,
No, it said, please stop, thanks.
Right. I mean, we could go on for a long time about everything that
Yeah.
they did wrong.
Well, like, I mean, the very concept of the fact that trees could somehow absorb a solar flare is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
It would just, I mean, they were magic trees that were fire resistant somehow, so I guess that's the
Right.
conceit.
Well, I guess they're able to remove oxygen in a discrete area
Yeah.
to make themselves immune from flames, but does that really make them immune from heat? At the end of the day, with all these things in this episode, that would probably be my smallest gripe.
Yeah.
I'll let them have that. That's their sci-fi explanation. I mean, there's been weirder, more nonsensical
Moon egg.
explanation, moon egg, for things. So, I'll let that one go. It doesn't bother me that much. But what does bother me is just having a story that I don't feel like makes any sense.
Yeah, when the characters don't act.
Yeah, they
as
don't act
should.
like they should. You
Like,
feel like
speaking of characters not acting as they should, who wouldn't want to go into the TARDIS and watch a solar flare from
exactly.
outer space?
Yeah.
Like, oh, no, I already went to war. I think I'm going to sit this one out. Like, what a jackass.
Right. They're turning Danny into like a caricature of what they want him to be.
Yeah.
And they don't need to do that. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
It's totally unrealistic.
Right.
And, I can, like you said, I can look past the unrealistic sci-fi stuff, unless it's, like, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But the characters at least need to act in a somewhat believable manner.
Right. I mean, you want to be able to feel like in reaction to something, you kind of know where they're going, because we've gotten to know these characters over a long period of time,
Yeah.
especially Clara. And when she just totally doesn't make any sense anymore, it draws you out of the story. You're like, oh yeah, this Clara actually isn't real. She's just a character in a story that people are writing.
Right.
And that ruins it.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I'd give this episode a D.
Yeah, a D seems fair, because it was below average, certainly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't,
It wasn't
a
abysmal.
complete disaster.
Yeah. Just forgettable. I'm not going to remember this episode next series. I'll forget this episode existed.
Yeah. I mean, this whole time I was thinking, oh man, I wish it was next week.
Yeah.
I'd much rather be watching the finale right now.
I think everybody has. Nobody's been talking about this episode a lot.
Yeah.
They're talking. Everybody's all hyped for next week.
That's
and
true.
The previews look like it might be worth the wait.
Yeah. And, if you guys disagree with us, by all means, leave a screed in the comments below and we'll respond to it. I would like to know what it is I'm missing that makes you think that this episode was any good.
Okay, well, that does it for this week. We'll be back next week with a review for the first half of this series finale. So until then, subscribe if you want to keep up with our latest reviews.
If you have any thoughts on this episode, leave a comment below and let us know what you think.
See you next week.
Steve? Steve.
What?
We still have to do our review.
Oh, that means it was just a dream. But it was so perfect. We did the perfect review. Everybody was gonna love us.
Well, do you remember what we did?
Yeah, maybe if we do the same thing, we'll have another perfect review in real life.
Are you sure that's how you did it in your dream?
Close enough. To our best review ever.